All right, to continue. Uh, I'm trying as well. Like, I don't know if I should like actually mention this, but like, before I'd like shoot the videos and then go back to them. I'm trying right now. The minute I actually finish the video, I try to upload it directly and schedule it so that I actually have like a fresh reflection in my mind about the things that I talked about. So there is a gap of at least 5 to 10 minutes between every time I actually record. Especially like the only reason I'm doing this is because I actually have notes I have to go through. So a lot of recordings. So the goal is to be able to like kind of go through it. But now I tried for the first time the actual new format for the naming convention that I did. So I think I'm doing good. I don't know. I would love some feedback. The last video that I posted, and I think it's video 35. My video 35. For you, it's no longer numbered, which means I have to change all the videos before that, but it's perfectly fine. I want to see how I want to do like a couple of videos like this in order to see how they actually like start syncing in my head and how I think of the different topics. To rewind, like I'm gonna start with the title, and then next to the title, I'm gonna put the intent, the goal, the action, the subject, the context. These five things are basically the no, I'm gonna put the subject, the context, the intent, the goals, and the action, and basically what exactly I'm doing, and in order to be able to like kind of like I don't know, maybe like help Google with its search engine optimization. Hey man, some people are going to be searching for my videos in the future. There's no belief. I promised myself over 1,000 videos. It's going to have to like click in my head at one point where my videos kind of change and alter. And I think since I'm doing it organically, I would always notice what I can do differently. But if I was like trying to apply somebody else's structures and works, that would be a lot harder for me to accept if I'm not doing well. Because I thought I'm doing well according to their standards, but it's not coming out from me naturally. That's a different conversation about vibes and energy and how you are and how the world will see you and how you, if you're trying to be something else or if you're trying to apply something that doesn't necessarily fit you. And by fit, I mean like kind of harmonizes with you, that people would always notice that and eventually always be like, no, no. And you'll never know why, and they can't explain why because most of us are not in touch with these parts of ourselves. I'm trying to get to a point where I understand how to kind of like move freely with the world around me because ultimately create that reality in your head. That's how you look at life. Your eyes are the ones that kind of like see the world, which means literally everything outside right now is in my head. It's in my head. And what I'm doing is I'm taking a step forward, it's getting bigger, which is the dimensional, which is the x-axis, y-axis, z-axis, and all this stuff. So that's a deeper thought for later on in the future. Maybe in a couple of days, I don't know, because the minute I talked about it right now, it became more interesting, and it's gonna like be in my mind until I let it out. And that's basically how things go. But to go back to the fact that we were reflecting on the day that we had, uh, I asked about the environment, and they told me stories about how there were trees at one point. Man, it hurt me. It hurt me. Nobody would understand that. Like, it hurt me. We're looking at a place where a tree used to be, and the reason it was chopped, the reason they were chopped was like just either farming or either just like war or either just to spite people. They would burn forests. Yeah, humanity has issues. It's perfectly fine. We're all like subjected to we're all subject to these things, and there's a lot that actually factor in that we can't comprehend. And I think we kind of like created the space for ourselves instead of like being a lot more. I don't know. We probably we probably were a lot more in the past, a lot more. But as we kind of evolved as a society, we devolved as human beings. So, so here I talk about in the core of the character, the and they speak about like how, like I mentioned earlier, like the people that actually succeeded over there were the people that stayed true to their words, which represents a certain characteristical traits. And since people over there are very much emotionally connected to others, that's basically the stuff that they will be able to relate to, like the consistency and the character. And I point at it right now because I remember having this conversation with them, and we were like sitting there brainstorming, and each one of them was kind of like being very much not volatile as an aggressive, but like emotionally, like kind of like happy that we're doing this, and then upset because it wouldn't work, and like that shift in both these emotions. And I had to like isolate their kind of like flow, and I had to kind of like, because it's coming from different places. It doesn't matter where it's going, it comes from different places, which means it switches positions based on the words I used. And I don't know these guys. I'm sitting with like three people that are eager to change, but basically all they're reflecting on how many times they just couldn't change. So there's like a bigger dilemma in their head that would affect them, that has been affecting them and their life and all this stuff. So it was super cool, but then it's more challenging for me, which is always as well like super cool and good. So uh, when I was talking to them and I pointed how the other people that actually succeeded, they basically started pointing about the characteristics and people could trust them. And then I was like, okay, so what about them they could trust? And I started asking these questions until we got to a point where I was like, and what about us they could trust? And the whole seated position changed because they can trust because we work hard, they can trust because we're diligent, they can trust because we have high quality, because we look after every single thing, because. And then when they were done talking, it felt like they were like, I don't know, it felt like that question suppose told them more about themselves than it did me. That it told them answering that question told them more about themselves than and reminded them of those things than it did me. So super beautiful. And naturally, I learned that through failing multiple times to be able to like connect to people, but also like understanding that there's a lot of books that you read that you kind of like work on and through and like apply to your life and all that good stuff. So and then we switched to the whole people kind of like rely on the services of government as well, and which we know is never a good idea, regardless of the government. It's never a good idea. And then fragments of stories of when they were small, and then basically talking about just they felt a bit, I don't know, they felt a bit emotionless, and I didn't know if I should look at it as a fucking traumatized thing because the people I were working with, like this region has been seeing war, right? Like there are questions you can't like approach because you're opening doors that you can't handle probably, or you don't know how to handle. It's like I can handle hearing the stories. I've been through some shit myself, but no, actually going through shit is different. So I didn't know what to do. Uh, but I tried myself to. I tried to actually like engage in a different. Hmm, how would I say that? I tried to engage in a more what do you want me to do so you don't have to be that way? What can I possibly do for you to not really like have these emotions get in your way? And the more I actually like portrayed myself as just like a guy listening, and what I did, there's a book called Never Split the Difference. What I did was, yeah, it's coming to me, and I didn't do it intentionally. But I've, it's in my head for the longest time. It's a technique called mirroring. It's a good negotiation tactic. I remember I'm looking at them as both of us have to kind of like come out as winners. So whatever I say and whatever they say has to kind of elevate us both into this deal that we're making, because they have to kind of agree to look at the stuff that I'm talking about. They have to let me do that stuff. Because if I just talk to them, they give me what I want and I do my work, they don't change. Whatever I do kind of doesn't have that impact that we're looking at. So the goal was to be kind of for both of us to win. And the best way I saw myself doing it was mainly repeating what they're trying to explain to me, specifically the last part, which is the mirroring effect. And what you do is basically, if somebody's telling you a story, the minute they actually end, you take the last three, 4 words and you kind of go like, and you repeat them. And anytime I did that, they would continue trying to explain, and they would continue trying to explain because that's where basically they stopped as if I understood. But the thing is, like, even if I did understand, what am I to understand? How can I understand anything they're trying to tell me? I haven't been in the country for 4 days. So the back and forth that I kept doing with them, and this kind of like sometimes added tension because I probably like exceeded it, and but most times kind of like allowed them to kind of hear what they're saying, especially since we're not actually negotiating a deal, but for me everything is a negotiation. So the idea was for them to actually understand what they're trying to tell me and why, and to kind of like point out a relevance to it, to what we're trying to do, because I'd understand completely if you're feeling betrayed by a person that you worked with for 4 years and ended up basically going with a different supplier. Yeah, but imagine how that person would feel if he has been talking to you for 4 years and you still haven't like supported his demands other than just giving them a good price, right? Like we all need that extra thing every once in a while to kind of like rejuvenate the relationship. That's like tradition every once in a while needs to change or else it becomes stale. But I can't explain that, right? Because anything I say is kind of like placing blame on them as much as the others, which is something that they're not accepting. So that kind of like back and forth with us allowed them to kind of like allowed them to release themselves from something like this. And I don't know if we drove off topic, but kind of like thought I had to mention how most of our conversations that day were kind of like guided and were super, I want to say therapeutic. I would like to say therapeutic.